How green are electric cars? Are they really the eco-friendly alternative they're touted to be? These questions have sparked heated debates across various platforms as the world grapples with climate change and the urgent need for sustainable solutions. Electric cars, with their zero tailpipe emissions, have been hailed as the green heroes of the automotive world. But is this the whole truth? Let's delve deeper. To truly gauge the environmental impact of electric cars, we need to consider their life cycle emissions. This includes not only the emissions during use, but also those created during production and disposal. We often overlook the fact that the creation of an electric car, especially its battery, can be a carbon-intensive process. And what about the disposal of these vehicles and their batteries? Do we have eco-friendly ways to deal with this? So, the question remains, are electric cars truly as green as we think they are? Let's pit electric cars against their gasoline counterparts. What's the real score in terms of carbon emissions? Now, when we talk about carbon emissions from cars, we're looking at two main components. First, the emissions from driving. Second, the emissions from production. So let's start with driving emissions. It's no secret that electric cars emit zero tailpipe emissions, but that's not the end of the story. The electricity to power these cars has to come from somewhere, right? And oftentimes that somewhere is a power plant burning fossil fuels. So even though your electric car might not be belching out fumes, the power plant that charged it might be. The carbon footprint here greatly depends on the energy sources of the region where you live. If your grid relies heavily on coal, the emissions from your electric car could be comparable to a gasoline car. But if your electricity comes from renewable sources, then your electric car truly shines in its low carbon footprint. Now, let's talk about production emissions. It's no secret that producing an electric car, especially the battery, requires a significant amount of energy. In fact, the production of an electric car can emit more carbon than producing a traditional car. However, as the industry advances, the carbon footprint of battery production is steadily decreasing. So, when you take both driving and production emissions into account, where do we stand? Well, it's a bit of a mixed bag. If you live in a region that relies heavily on coal for electricity, and you don't drive very much, a gasoline car might have a lower carbon footprint. On the other hand, if you live in a region with a lot of renewable energy and you drive a lot, an electric car could be significantly greener. In the end, the carbon comparison between electric and gasoline cars isn't black and white. There are a lot of factors that come into play. It seems the green label isn't as straightforward as it appears. When we talk about electric cars, we can't overlook the elephant in the room: battery production. Diving right in, the batteries that power electric cars are not made of thin air. They require a substantial amount of raw materials, specifically lithium, nickel, and cobalt. These materials aren't exactly lying around on the surface of our planet, waiting to be picked up. They have to be mined, a process that can be devastating to landscapes and ecosystems. Not to mention the energy required and the carbon emissions produced during extraction, which can be significant. And once these raw materials are extracted, they're not ready to be popped into a car. They have to be processed and manufactured into batteries, a task that itself is energy intensive. For instance, producing a battery for an electric car can emit up to twice as much carbon dioxide as producing a conventional gasoline car engine. That's a hefty carbon footprint before the electric vehicle has even hit the road. But wait, there's more. Once these batteries have lived out their useful life, they can't just be tossed in the trash. They contain hazardous materials that can harm the environment if not disposed of properly. In fact, the improper disposal of batteries can lead to soil and water contamination, posing risk to both wildlife and human health. Fortunately, many companies are now offering recycling programs for batteries. These programs can recover up to 95% of the materials in a battery, reducing the need for new mining and mitigating some of the environmental impact. However, the recycling process itself is not without its own environmental footprint. So while electric cars don't emit carbon dioxide while driving, they're not entirely green. The production of batteries does add a significant environmental cost to electric cars. The key is understanding that while electric vehicles may not be perfect, they can be a step in the right direction when it comes to reducing our overall impact on the environment. The production of batteries does add a significant environmental cost to electric cars. With all these facts laid bare, where does this leave us? Let's be fair and square. Electric cars emit far fewer greenhouse gases during use than their gas-guzzling counterparts. And here's the kicker: as we shift towards renewable energy sources, the carbon footprint left by charging these cars will continue to shrink. Now, isn't that a breath of fresh air? On the flip side, we can't ignore the environmental impact of battery production. But hey, don't lose hope just yet. Battery technology is evolving at a breakneck pace. The aim is not just to make them more efficient, but also more environmentally friendly. And let's not forget about recycling. As we improve recycling methods, the environmental cost of battery production will reduce significantly. So yes, electric cars aren't the green superheroes we thought they were, but they are not villains either. They're somewhere in between, and honestly, that's a good place to be. While electric cars aren't perfect, they do offer a path towards more sustainable transportation. Interested in electric cars? Here are some things to consider. First, ponder over the energy mix in your area. Electric cars are only as clean as the energy that charges them. If your region heavily relies on coal or other carbon-intensive sources, the benefits might not be as high. Second, don't just look at the tailpipe emissions. Consider the entire life cycle emissions of different models. This includes the manufacturing process, particularly the battery production, and the end-of-life disposal. Third, think about your driving habits. If you drive long distances regularly, a plug-in hybrid might be a better fit. Fourth, consider the resale value. Electric cars are evolving rapidly, and newer models might make older ones obsolete quickly. Lastly, don't forget the charging infrastructure. Do you have easy access to charging stations, or can you install one at home? Remember, the greenest car is the one that meets your needs while minimizing its environmental impact.